not on the items raised in the staff report, I will reluctantly interrupt you and ask you to please take your seat. We spent a whole day a month ago hearing all of your comments, and we appreciate the level of interest that you showed in the development that's being proposed for Calaveras County. But we do want to, again, focus our discussion today. And very quickly, we'll be discussing mitigation for Weimer Road, wastewater, or water, groundwater in the area, code violations. I think Shaylin covered that pretty clearly. The purpose of the hearing here is for purpose of discussing the EIR, road improvement and traffic mitigation requirements, adequacy of the final EIR, global climate change and greenhouse gas emissions, use of septic and wells for large commercial project, and general plan validity. So I'm going to ask that, as I said, the applicant will be allowed to speak first, and you may, if there's going to be several of you, you can line up on the side like we did before so that we can get you through very quickly. All right?
Just a process question. I'm trying to understand what you're saying. Last time there was a rebuttal. For those of us that were going to respond to the surrebuttal, would you like us not to speak during this reopening of the public hearing on the staff report and wait, and you're going to reopen that portion for rebuttal, or how would you like that to go?
We're just focusing our discussion and testimony on the items that I just mentioned.
So we won't have a chance today to respond to Ms. Kindersman's or whatever rebuttal. We can't surrebut from last meeting. Is that what I'm understanding? Or do we just tie that into any comments on the staff report?
But tie that into your 5 minutes.
Thank you.
All right. So it's now time for the applicant or applicant's agent. And just to remind everybody, we don't swear you in, but of course we do hope that you'll tell the truth to the best of your knowledge. Please sign in. We have a sign-up sheet, and state your name for the record. Good morning. We will probably take a break at around 11 o'clock for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Bill Abbott, Abbott and Kinderman, representing the applicant. I anticipate that I will be the only presenter in terms of the 15 minutes. We have some very specific comments. We've given you a handout. With your permission and indulgence, if I could walk you through that, that will allow us to pinpoint what our specific concerns are. On the top page, there's 3 Roman numerals, 1, 2, and 3. Item number 1 comes under the label of water. I've set forth the number of 310,000 GTD. That's the number that is in the county's draft EIR. This is all in the cover page. The number 310,000 comes from the draft EIR. It's in the final EIR. And the number 310,000 represents the consultant's evaluation as to the current water usage. And based upon that number, the EIR recommends, and the consultant recommends, no additional development as part of the project. That there's a comfort level with a 310,000, but they don't recommend expanding the amount of potential groundwater use until there's been this 5-year study. So that's the number in the draft, that's the number in the final EIR, and that's the number that drives the recommendation against no further expansion. Now, if you look on the same page, and that number comes from national averages for golf course irrigation, and that's a reasonable approach to use. However, the next number on the page is 245,000, and that number is based upon the actual water usage on the golf course at Trinitas in 2008. And we know that number because there is a computerized irrigation system that monitors water use, and that's the current practice because it allows you to fine-tune the amount of watering so that you don't overwater on a golf course. So the assumption that went into the draft was an assumption that the course would use 310,000 gallons per day. The actual number in 2008, with the course fully greened up, all the grass in, the tees in, was 245,000. So if you take the actual water use, and let me add, in 2008, if you check the statistics, and we've given staff these numbers, and we believe they've been made available to you, is that last year was a low precipitation year. And during times when there's natural low precipitation, you would expect a spike in terms of irrigation practices. Nevertheless, even though annual rainfall in that part of the county was 30% below average, the amount of water actually used in that year was substantially below the assumption that's in the EIR. So if you take the actual number of water usage and add to it the projected average daily use for the other uses, you come up with the third number that's on this page, 276,000 gallons per day. That number is below the 310,000. And remember, the 310,000 gallons per day was that threshold that is in the EIR, and staff said don't elevate, or the recommendation is don't improve land uses that would escalate above 310. The point I'm trying to make here is that the EIR coupled with the actual data on water usage supports the proposition that the estimated water usage will be below the 310,000, and that's the number that your consultants had already identified as being an acceptable number in terms of water usage. What's to be drawn from that? And that is water supply. There's ample evidence in the record to say that use of groundwater is an acceptable practice and will not result in significant adverse impacts, and there's enough water to support the full Trinitas project and surrounding land uses. And these are numbers that come from your EIR, your draft, your final, and the actual irrigation numbers. That's point number one. There is sufficient water. You have competent evidence to support that conclusion. If you turn to the handout, past the first colored sheet, we have replicated the conditions of approval. We have specific requests, and those are highlighted in red. So the first request deals with condition number one, which is the indemnity clause. In my opinion, I think this provision as currently drafted is overly broad. I don't believe it's consistent with the county's past practice. I frankly don't think it's consistent with statutory law. And our request is to delete the condition, not that we're afraid of indemnity, because in fact we have previously signed at the county's request an indemnity agreement. The county no longer has that document in its file. We will re-sign the original document and have our signatures notarized again. So our request is, let's follow standard county practice. We'll execute the standard indemnity agreement. We certainly don't agree with the language as drafted in number one. If you turn to the next page, page 2 of 13, item I-7, there is a blank as to when the use must start. We propose that it be December 31st, 2010. So there's a missing number there. If you turn next to page 5 of 13, we've highlighted in yellow some language that talks about, that requires for these special events that every attendee wear a numbered wrist bracelet daily. Now, I think it's interesting that the immediate item before us was 1,500 to 1,800 cyclists riding through town. Who's going to maintain those numbers? Do they have to wear wrist bracelets? So as far as I know, the county does not require that a person attending any other special event at any other venue in the county has to wear a numbered bracelet. We would ask you to exercise your discretion to strike that provision. We're happy to provide number counts to the county, which I think is probably more than what anybody else does in the county, but we don't believe there's any need to wear numbered bracelets issued on an annual basis. If you turn next to page 7 of 13, item 3-5, there's some language that says that you have to get a permit for all for-profit food vendors. We don't have any problem with that. There's actually a typo there. We're not proposing for-profit food vendors. We think the language should simply say, if you're going to serve food, you need to get the right permits from the Department of Environmental Health. So we don't have any objection to the regulation, but there's a suggestion here about for-profit food vendors, which has never been our proposal. So we think that the cleanup simply requires that whoever provides food has to get the required permits. On item number 7, there's no timing, page 8 of 13. This is Roman 4, number 1, item A, Hospital Road, number 7. There's no timing provision on some of these conditions. And these major improvements we think relate to the clubhouse or the spa and lodge. So we request that the timing, we're not asking you to waive the condition, we're asking you to specify what's the appropriate timing, and that would be prior to opening of the major facilities which require the specific improvements under number 7. If you turn next to page 12 of 13, this is under the San Joaquin Road. As staff just explained, there is no nexus to support the imposition of this improvement as a mitigation measure, and it's being proposed as an accommodation to San Joaquin County. Nevertheless, for the county to impose conditions on projects, there has to be a nexus to support the condition. An accommodation to an adjacent county, I don't believe, is a legally recognized legal standard for your ability to impose a condition. You have to have a basis to support the condition. We ask it to be struck because there's no factual basis or nexus established before you to support that particular condition. Our final request with respect to the conditions of approval are on the last page. We've just called it Roman 6 General. And this deals with what's the effect of litigation. And this is a fairly standard approach that we've used in other jurisdictions. And this basically says, if a lawsuit's filed, I mean, in the real world, a lawsuit has a chilling effect on the ability of an applicant to proceed with the project. All we're saying is that to the extent that you have timelines in here for performance, that the timelines be suspended during the course of litigation. You know, for example, there's a requirement that certain aspects of the project be started by the date of December, we propose 2010. Well, that's great if there's no litigation, but if there is litigation, we want that performance date stayed during the course of litigation. Now, we go on to propose language that says if the developer elects to proceed with the project, then of course they have to comply with all the relevant conditions of approval and all the mitigation measures. So we're not asking for a general waiver of those provisions. If we proceed with the project, we have to comply with all the relevant conditions and mitigation measures. We're just asking that we don't want the project to go into default simply because a lawsuit has been filed. That's attachment A. Those are our specific requests, as you can see, are fairly narrow with respect to the conditions of approval. We also have 2 requests with respect to mitigation measures. That follows the next colored sheet. Mitigation measure 3.8-6C. This is a mitigation measure that requires the applicant to do 3 things. This has to do with conflict with zoning of the ag zoning of the Williamson Act. The first request is to remove the encroaching golf tee on adjacent property. We have no objection to that requirement. We think it makes sense. We think that that mitigation measure directly relates to the physical impact associated with the project. The mitigation measures, and these were added, go on to say, record easements putting 230 acres of grazing land into a conservation easement and restrict the use of the well on the adjacent property. There is no nexus, there is no evidence in the record to support a conclusion that says this project has an adverse effect on adjacent agricultural land uses. In fact, the well supports the orchard that has been planted next door, as well as supports the Trinitas project. There is a void of evidence to say that this project is adversely affecting adjacent agricultural uses, and there's a void of evidence to support the conclusion that this has an adverse effect on agriculturally zoned property. At most, I'll just leave it at that. I'd be happy to answer questions about that. But there's a void of evidence. So our request is strike 2 and 3. We're comfortable with number one. We think it makes sense. We think it's appropriate. We think the record supports the first condition. But with due respect to staff, we disagree that the evidence supports number two and number three. I think they are measures which are really de facto zoning compliance issues, and that is the subject of a separate proceeding. As we have previously briefed, the CEQA process is not a code violation, a vehicle for code violation resolution. So we support number one, we object to number two and number three. Our second mitigation measure that we want to comment on falls on the second page. This deals with an off-site traffic improvement. The actual recommendation of staff, we don't believe conforms to the mitigation analysis that's contained in your draft and final EIR. Your traffic consultant said that the turn pocket on the state highway was required when the developer was engaged in the special events in the 500 to 999 range. Staff has said we're going to lower that threshold, but there's no evidence to support lowering that threshold. So we think it's an appropriate condition, but it's a condition that should be matched to the impact analysis that's in your EIR, and that's with the major, the one time a year event that we are requesting between 500 and 999. Our final request, attachment C, follows the green sheet. This is our proposed edits. The staff recommendation, of course, is to only approve a portion of the project. We, of course, seek approval of all the entitlements. We took the staff, the paragraphs that are in the staff report that deal with the recommended action, and in a red line strikeout format show you what changes we think are appropriate if you concur that this application is appropriate for approval. And so if the commission supports our request, then we would move approval of the staff recommendation as modified by this document, both the conditions of approval, the mitigation measures, and the proposed resolution of the Planning Commission. We would be happy to speak to any other issues if the commissioners have questions, but these are our specific requests.
Mr. Abbott?
Thank you.
Who would like to be next?
Good morning. My name is Lynette Hospital. I reside at 9664 Hospital Road across from Trinitas. And as far as the well water, I have to tell you, on March 13th, I had to call my pump man out.
I'm sorry, when you bent over, I couldn't hear.
Pump man out. This is how much sand was in our canister. He couldn't even get the canister out. This is my sandy water. January 27, 2007, our pump went out. We had to put a new pump in and go down deeper. So to say that the water is not being affected by his neighbors, it is. My well man said the water is dropping, level is dropping. We're going to be in a drought. We are in a drought. Is he going to stop watering his golf course when we're in a drought? Is my livestock going to be affected? Which they are already. He said that this does not affect the agricultural land across the way. Yes, it does. My nurse is being stressed. I have my breeding stock breed from May to September. This year I really had a lot of, like he said, his wife when she was pregnant, our stress affected her. Well, the stress affects my livestock. They can have infertility, abortion, stillborn, and not breed at all. I had a lot of ewes this year, not breed at all. I'm down. Last year I had 53 lambs. I only have 4 lambs this year. So that's a loss of income for me and for our family. Considering the road, yes, the road is very narrow right now. It's named after my ancestors. My grandfather bought the land in 1900, and we keep ranching on it. I don't want to see that road. It's a country road. It should remain a country road. And is anybody, like he says, he's going to have events. Those events are going to stress my livestock, the noise and everything. I have a pin where they go in at night at 5 o'clock at night. If he's going to have lights and all this noise, that's going to stress them. And that makes them lose weight. That makes me lose production. and loss of income. It cost us over $4,000 to put that pump in January, to go down deeper because we were getting sand. Before, we didn't have any problem at all. And then I had to, after the pump man came, I had to have a plumber come because I didn't have any water to my house, and my toilet didn't work. So that's another cost. And I don't even know what the cost was of what happened on, the pump yet, when the pump man came out. And after the plumbers came, now I got to call the pump man again to do my, redo this filter because they said it's probably it's sandy again because they had to blow out the sand to my house to fix what they had to fix. When we put the well in, our original well was 35 depth. We had to go down to 260. So don't tell me it's not affecting the water. It is. And it's affecting agriculture across the way from it. And if he has these events, these people are going to go down the road, they're going to drink, they're going to go into the fence. I may have lots of, I may hit one of my livestock, and then I have to replace the fencing, and the fencing costs too. Everything's costly economically for me. And this is costing more. So he's affecting me very economically in agriculture. It should never have been done. The Williamson Act. It was under the Williamson Act. Williamson Act is supposed to protect agriculture. That golf land was built illegally. It should never be done. In my opinion, it should be dug up, put back into agriculture. He can have his olive trees, whatever else is considered agriculture. That's all I have. If you would like to see the sand, there's the sand. And there's my water 2 days afterwards yet.
Thank you. Who would like to be next?
Mark Conley on behalf of KIRC. I'd like to...
May I have your name?
Yeah,
please?
Mark Conley on behalf of KIRC. Okay, I'd like to have Ron Carciere come up. One issue that was raised last time when we left the last meeting was there was an economic analysis. There was going to be a response by the applicant. He submitted several letters to you. Staff has incorporated some of those findings into the staff report. And we want to address that issue because there's been no opportunity to respond to those economic analysis arguments that, again, there are letters of March 3rd and March 6th, which were submitted to you by the applicant with updated information on the economic benefits. So if I could call Ron Carciere to address those issues within our 5 minutes. And then I may come back to address some of the issues that are raised by council, if that's acceptable.
You're going to do all of this within the 5 minutes?
Mr. Carciere is going to, I'm just telling you what our plans are. Mr. Carciere is going to do 5 minutes, and I will come back within 5 and identify, address some of these issues that have been raised by the applicant. Mr. Carciere is going to limit himself to 5 minutes unless you want to ask questions or have additional information that you want from him.
Please sign in. Please sign in.
Those of you who wish to speak would move over to the side. We could save some time as one speaker leaves and the other comes forward. It seemed to work pretty well at the last meeting.
Thank you very much. My name is Ron Carciere. I'm a golf course consultant. I think what I will do, I have quite a bit of background information on the conclusions that I've drawn regarding the financial analysis, but I think what I'll do is talk about my conclusions first, and then if time permits, go into some of the background about the golf industry and our golf market here locally that support the conclusions and my analysis.
Please keep in mind the focus of the discussion, the items on the staff report. Go ahead.
Correct, okay. And again, I was asked to analyze the financial forecasts that were provided. The information, and I looked over numerous documents, the information that I reviewed indicated that an assumption is being made that there could be anywhere from 12 to 24,000 rounds played at the golf course. And I would say that is within reason. Profitability for golf operations, though, as far as daily fee golf courses or public golf courses go, is probably closer to 35 to 40,000 rounds to reach profitability. The comments are made that approximately 60 to 80% of the play is estimated to come from out-of-town guests, which I would tend to agree with that number. The disagreement that I have with that number is that many of the golf courses in the market today have guests coming from out of the area. We currently have an oversupplied situation, and the local residents, there just isn't a large enough population base to support the golf courses that are in the market today. So many of the golf courses have large out-of-town play today. What will happen, in my experience, in these kinds of circumstances where you have an oversupplied market, is that there will be a cannibalization or a draw from the golf courses that are already in the market for a considerable amount of that play. So while Trinitas may draw some outside play that doesn't come to this market currently, a lot of the play will be from other courses that are currently bringing people in from the outside. One of the reports I read talks about a operating expense of $150,000 to $1.8 million, somewhere in that range. And for an 18-hole golf course in Northern California, that's extremely low. And the range is typically between about $2.5 million to $4 million operating expense on an annual basis. One assumption that is made in the analysis is that the average or the typical green fee will be $125 per round, which is a figure that is far above what is supported by the local market. The advertised rates, or what we might call rack rates, if you compare it to a hotel operation, are generally much higher than what your actual revenue per round, your realized revenue per round is. In the golf courses in this market, their actual realized revenue per round is somewhere in the vicinity of about $35 to $50 per round. That's the competition. That's what the market supports. That's what the demographics support. And there's a long history of that for years for the courses that exist in this market. There's also some analysis that indicates that the daily spending, in addition to green fees, will be somewhere in the range of $200 to $500 per round or per player, which, again, I feel, in my experience and the analysis I've done, is far overstated. Typically, the way I analyze and the way people in my business analyze these things is that we look at other facilities and what the spending patterns are at other facilities. Food and beverage operations, generally at daily fee golf courses, will range anywhere from maybe a low of $7.50 per round up to maybe a high of about $15 per round. If it's a facility that has a lot of outside events, non-golf events, weddings, banquets, those sorts of things, that figure can go up as high as $20 or $25 on a per round basis.
Thank you.
Within the time, that's all I have.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a question for you, Lee, just real quickly. You know, as I was listening to your data, and I understand payrolls pretty well myself, but when you're comparing your data, would you say that most of your, like you're using averages, wouldn't you say they're kind of skewed towards land that's a lot more expensive and labor that'll cost a lot more than it will here?
Well, the data as far as the expense side of the equation, is that what you're talking to, or the income side?
Well, I mean, I couldn't compare, you know, this property with Pebble Beach and Monterey.
No.
You know, and most of the golf courses that have been scary enough to let me on them one time are in pretty nice areas.
Right. The information I'm talking about, the data I'm talking about, is from the local golf courses within this market and Northern California, from the valley up through the foothills. That's kind of the market range that I've looked at.
Okay.
And that's the data that I'm talking about. And that would include Stockton, Sacramento, the city courses. It would also include the outlying courses.
So you're not throwing Blackhawk against Trinitas as far as expense ratios?
No, not at all. No.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, my name is Jim Frost. I'm superintendent of Calaveras Unified School District. I would just like to talk a little bit about our history here in approving projects. Back in the early 90s, many developments were approved, and if you look in the records, Calaveras Unified was there to object to those unless they were mitigated. Many of those were not mitigated, which required us, in order to serve the students coming out of those projects, we were forced to take out long-term financing in the form of a certificate of participation. This wasn't particularly problematic over the many years because enough developments were approved that we were able to service this debt through our ongoing developer fee income, and so there was a nice symbiotic balance that happened. Recently, during the combination of the economic downturn, redoing the general plan, reorganization of planning and all the things that have happened, that developer fee income has dried up to zero, which has forced us to take $690,000 out of our educational funding to service this classroom debt that was a result of approval of projects that we objected to originally. And therefore, we're kind of in a bad spot right now. And we definitely need the income, especially from these low impact kinds of projects. That doesn't mean willy-nilly we're going to favor every project, because certainly I hear talk of high impact projects such as low cost housing and all those kinds of things, which really the mitigation doesn't cover it. So we definitely favor these kinds of low impact projects that do help us fund our ongoing debt that resulted from normal growth. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got a question for you. I'm sorry. How much do you expect to get out of a project like this? Just a round figure.
Well, any income. I mean, we have set minimum. We're at the minimum mitigation fee the state requires us, which is right around $3 a square foot for residential and about 63 cents a square foot for commercial property. So right now, any income for us, you know, we get hit with a double whammy as the state, you know, as the state budget crisis lowers our overall revenue. We also have to use that overall income now that was generated for education to service our debt that was generated, that we had to be generated to house extra kids from previous projects that were done back in the 90s. You know, there was a nice balance before. We got enough developer fee income to service our debt, and it didn't come out of really classroom programs for kids. That's not true today.
So you would get a fee per rooftop, then you'd get a
Right.
fee per the golf course.
Yeah, square footage fee and anything that was built there.
Thanks, Mr. Foster.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Good morning. I'm Laura Evans, and I'm one of the neighbors of the Trinitas project. I live about a quarter of a mile from the edge, and I've been there about 16 years. With regards to the last meeting, I just wanted to bring up a couple things with the report that was brought up this morning in regards to the road and the water issue that came up again. Okay, just real quick, 4 points.
And that is, with regards to the road, Hospital Road is in need of repair. The county has not been able to maintain it. This project will fix 1.5 miles of the road by widening it and fixing line of sight issues. There's a lot of roller coaster on that road, as some people call it. That would help a lot. Additionally, if you approve the clubhouse with the restaurant and the banquet facility, the NEMIs will be required to pay over $200,000 to the rim and benefit basin fees. Second point on the fire protection, the NEMIs have installed the only fire hydrant in our area. The Jenny Lind firefighters will be able to use this hydrant to refill their strike trucks in the event of a fire. Additionally, the entire golf course serves as a fire break that can prevent the spread of a major wildfire. This is significant because the large agricultural parcels do not have fire breaks and can burn directly towards the rural residential neighborhoods we live in. The green golf course would act as a fire break before a fire could reach our homes. Third, recreation and socialization. This is important to the neighborhood because we don't have a local place to meet and gather. We have to travel over 30 minutes round trip to get to recreation and restaurants. That might not seem significant, but in today's economy, every dollar counts. We would all rather drive 1 minute to Trinidad to enjoy a meal, a drink, or an event together. Schools and public safety is the last thing I'd like to bring up, and that is I think all of us are aware that the schools and public safety have taken some of the biggest hits in recent state and local budget cuts. And that was just mentioned a minute ago here. If you only approve the golf course, the schools, the sheriffs, and the firefighters get no money. If you approve the homes and the restaurant, they will get some funds from that as well. So please approve this, and thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning to you and to everybody here. My name is Joan Bull, and I speak with some experience. Can you hear me? I know, I'm sure.
Could you pull that down?
Is that better?
Pull the whole thing. No, the pole. Yeah, I don't think you'd have to,
How's that? Better?
just try and speak directly into it.
All right, we'll try that way. Is that
Thank
better?
you.
Anyway, I know you have a very important decision to make, and you're getting a lot of fors and a lot of against. I speak with experience as I worked at a famous golf course for many years, so I know what happens with golf courses. One of the most important things, we talked about roads, and one of the most important things, I live in Hospital myself. I live at a 90-degree curve. I've been there for 9 years. And in those 9 years, the recommended speed is 35. No one pays attention to that. There's been minimum 6 accidents. I should say, not luckily, they always land across the road from my land, but there's been accidents. The things I'd like to talk about is that, first of all, it's so important that you ride the roller coaster. And I mean go from Highway 12 to Highway 26. There's dips, dives, no access. There's the roller coaster, there's points. And if you take it in daytime, nighttime, but then project that this complex has gone on, you're traveling from 26 or 12 in the dark at times, and suddenly there's a big lighted area, and you hear noise and what happens, and then you're again back into the dark. The roller coaster at parts, if you have not taken it day, night, and in the Tule fog, there is no easement. There's no easement to go into, and you've already mentioned the county has no money to spend. Also, this is a road, it is not by county, it is by the state. So all of Hospital, I found out, is by the state. There will be, no questions about it, there will be accidents. How do I know this? Working at a golf course, I know that there are beverages. The beverages are served, even if there's just the golf course itself, by golf cart to the players. Now, imagine, first time there, you come in daytime. You're having a good time. You're tired. It's now dark. You make go to get on the road. Where am I? Remember, you're tired, you're hungry, and you're sometimes under the influence, and let's not lie and say that won't happen. So all of a sudden, there's no way There's no easement to get out of the way for people coming that are traveling on this, and there's going to be a lot of people. If you talk about 500, that's fine. You talk about 1,000. But all these people will be on this road, and even in parties. If the restaurant goes through, there's going to be weddings, there's going to be parties, and the same thing. Suddenly you're having a good time, and you're under, and let's face it, honestly, the influence. Please ride this in the three ways. I know Tule Fog's not so much around right now, but if anybody knows what Tule Fog is, it's very dangerous. There are peaks on the roller coaster. The reason they call it roller coaster, if you haven't ridden it, you get to the top. You can't see what's down there. And if you ask a lot of the neighbors, I'm sure they have been faced where they start to come out onto Hospital, and suddenly and the kids love it. This is called Freeway Place. It's a roller coaster, see how fast they can go in their trucks, and they can't see in various areas. And that can never be corrected. There isn't anybody who's going to knock down off the roller coaster to make it nice and smooth. The accidents will increase. It's a guarantee. So it's not just Calaveras. One thing about being state, what's good, is every liability that will happen, every suit that will happen, every taxpayer in California will have to pay some of this. So it's not just our county, unfortunately. So please, I know it's a big decision, but I really ask you to ride that roller coaster in the three elements so you really can see what's going on. Please take from 12 down to 26 and vice versa. And if you don't do it at night, really see yourself with all the lights, all the noise going on, and see how then suddenly you're in the dark again. Where is your attention? It's going to be to that project. I respectfully request that you take that ride. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Alex Chedley. I'm here on behalf of San Joaquin County Public Works. Here to talk about Weimar Road in San Joaquin County. I think there might have been a little bit of confusion on what exactly is Weimar Road versus Hospital. And I say that because in the traffic studies on page 7, it reads, Hospital Road is north of Highway 26, while Weimar Road is south of 26. That's not true. There's no Hospital Road in San Joaquin County. So if you're driving south on Hospital and you hit the county line, it becomes Weimar Road as far as San Joaquin County is concerned. Locally, it may be known as Hospital, but if we're talking about road names and official classification, it's Weimar Road in San Joaquin County, north of 26 to the county line. The reason that that is important is a couple of reasons. One is, on today's staff report, it was noted that Weimar Road, and I'm reading from the bottom of page 1, it is noted that Weimar Road, north of 26, is located within San Joaquin County and operates at level of service A. That is not the case, because the road was misidentified on page 7 of the traffic study. It's operating at level C. South of 26, Weimar Road is operating at level service of A, and I'm not here to talk about Weimar Road south of 26, just north of 26. If you look at, well, I know you don't have it in front of you, but on table 6, page 12 of the traffic study, Hospital Road from the project to 26, now I just said that was misidentified, but I'm going to read from the traffic study, operates at an existing level of C, existing level of service C, with a peak hour volume threshold of 195 vehicles. Remember that number, 195 vehicles with a level of service C. San Joaquin County records indicates that the pavement width on Weimar Road is 18 feet. It's classified as a rural residential road, which is our smallest road. It's the type of road you would see in a cul-de-sac with 10 homes on it, okay? So the classification is a rural residential road in our county, and our records indicate a pavement width of 18 feet. That's the total pavement width. One last reference to the traffic study, I don't want to bog down with a lot of details. You know, engineers like to do that. On table 30, page 65 of the traffic study, looking at the special event traffic volumes for this portion of road, it indicates a peak hour volume of 188 vehicles. And I just a second ago said that the peak hour threshold was 195 vehicles. So what I'm here to say today is you have, in 1 hour, 188 vehicles going up the smallest of roads with 18 feet of pavement. So think about that. It also shows a facility classification as a minor collector. And I think that might have something to do with the confusion with the name. It's not a minor collector in San Joaquin County. It's a rural residential or local road, or simply stated, it is the smallest of roads that we classify. So I'm here to reiterate what I handed out at the last meeting, that we'd like to see Weimar Road improved within San Joaquin County to the rural, I know this is a little confusing, overuse of the word rural, but the classification would be a rural road. It's essentially widening the pavement. The total pavement width would be 32 feet with shoulders on the sides. And I handed out the detail at the last meeting, so it should be.
Thank you.
Have any questions about that? I know it's a little confusing, and I made a lot of references.
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have a copy for staff as well? All right, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Ed Pattison with Calaveras County Water District, and I'm the Water Resource Manager. Let me see if I can get this up so I don't have to hunch over to speak. Thank you. I'm all thumbs in front of a large group of people. Thank you. I'm here this morning to clarify CCWD's position with respect to this particular project. But before I begin, I want to state that CCWD's interest and its primary focus is in managing water sustainably throughout the county, and that includes surface water and groundwater. CCWD comments on every project that comes through the planning department when it comes to anything having to do with surface water and groundwater. State law requires it for developments of 500 units or greater. In this case, that doesn't necessarily meet that threshold, but it does involve groundwater. And so therefore, CCWD has sent a number of letters over the last couple of years regarding its position on groundwater extraction, and groundwater management. To clarify the planning department's staff report, CCWD does support the use of groundwater conditioned upon 4 points, which you have before you in the one-page summary. I'm not going to bother reading those, but basically what we're asking is that the mitigation, which I think is appropriately addressed in the staff report, is that groundwater monitoring is done on each and every well in the area, including both within the project and around the project, and that that monitoring be done by a professional that knows what they're doing, and that that data becomes part of the CCWD's groundwater monitoring database. As I mentioned at the last Planning Commission meeting, CCWD has a $250,000 grant from the state with a total budget of around $450,000 to install nested monitoring wells, to expand the groundwater monitoring database, and to include that data in an online GIS-based database system that most people will be able to access to take a look at groundwater levels in this Comanche Valley Springs area. Now, we're interested in the entire regional basin, Also, in terms of the eastern San Joaquin groundwater basin. And so we're managing this groundwater management area in conjunction with San Joaquin County. So we think the mitigation is appropriate in terms of monitoring, and that if adverse impacts are identified and established, that they be appropriately mitigated and addressed at that time. So to reiterate, CCWD does support the use of groundwater in the area with the following mitigation conditions identified in the one-page summary. I'd also like to reinforce that we do have a groundwater management plan. It's been adopted according to California water law, and we'd like to, it's a voluntary collaborative program whereby CCWD is trying to address and mitigate the lowering groundwater table. This groundwater table has been dropping well before 2000. It's been dropping for decades. And in my mind, it's very clear that CCWD has surface water rights available from the McCollum and the Calaveras that in the long term, we need to put those surface water rights to use in this West County area. There's thousands of acres of agricultural production that has expressed interest in surface water irrigated ag, both in the west of the Calaveras County line and within this Calaveras County area. And it's that surface water that will help mitigate this dropping groundwater level. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, the amount of groundwater extraction in the Western Calaveras County groundwater management area is not even measurable compared to the extractions that are going on in San Joaquin County. So we feel that we can support the use of this groundwater, but we want to underline that surface water is extremely valuable and it needs to be put to beneficial use to help mitigate this groundwater basin, and it would provide regional benefit to the agricultural producers as well as the domestic well owners. And in addition to that, CCWD has been successful in getting authorization of a water supply infrastructure project through the Water Resources Development Act of 2007 from Congress. We're moving toward appropriations that will help fund initial engineering studies that will help us advance some past engineering work that we've done. And to this day, Trinitas has submitted a letter to the Board of Directors of Calaveras County Water District expressing the voluntary financial participation of $900,000 toward an infrastructure project that brings surface water to the West County area, as well as $80,000 toward groundwater monitoring. We feel that's a good public-private partnership, and we're hoping to broaden that participation with the county and other landowners in the area. Thank you for your time.
I have a question, though, excuse me if I can get you before you go away here. Last meeting, I thought it was Jeff Davison said that the indication was we can't put straws in the water that are at Comanche anymore. But I mean, I was kind of blown out of the water about 2 days after this. In the Lodi News Sentinel, there was an article on their front page about they're extracting thousands of gallons per second to recharge groundwater in Clements. And I thought, well, you know, are we losing our rights to the McCollum water?
All water rights are at risk in this state right now. That's why we have kind of lived by that principle of use it or lose it. We currently do have water rights available. The longer we wait to put them to beneficial use, the more precarious our position is in terms of Calaveras County. And in terms of Comanche Reservoir, while it is close to, borders the northern portion of this basin, East Bay Mud uses that as their regulation reservoir. So it can fill quickly, but they can draw it down quickly. They do that to keep Pardee full because that's their diversion through the East Bay Mud Aqueduct that gravity flows their drinking water to the East Bay area. So our need to put the McCollum River to beneficial use is a function of where can we economically divert the water and how can we convey it in a way that the landowners can afford it.
Thank you. I have 2 more questions for you. Due east of this project that's proposed, to me it looks like it's incredibly large, where you can even put a speedboat in it. There's a large reservoir in San Joaquin County, And somebody told me it was called Duck Lake. I don't know about it. Is that, are they extracting that water from the McCollum also to fill that reservoir?
I'm happy to say that Brent Harrington's invited me to provide the Planning Commission a presentation on water projects in the West County area in April 9th, 16th, I believe the date is, and he's waiting for a title from me for the presentation. But I will cover a lot of these issues in detail. But in short answer to you, there is a proposed Duck Creek off-stream reservoir that is just west of the Calaveras County line. That proposed reservoir by San Joaquin County is to capture wet weather flows off the McComb River between January and April to help provide some mitigation for the declining groundwater levels in the eastern San Joaquin groundwater basin. That wet weather permit that San Joaquin County has filed would be junior in priority to CCWD's senior priority to Comanche's water right. So we still have our priority water right, but what we're lacking is the infrastructure and the means to economically convey that water to projects such as Wallace, Trinitas, agriculture, both on the San Joaquin County side and in Calaveras County, because you know there's thousands of acres of agriculture on the West County, or the eastern portion of the eastern San Joaquin groundwater basin that's pumping hundreds of thousands of acre feet of groundwater. And so that Duck Creek project is one management strategy to help San Joaquin County mitigate the overdraft in the eastern San Joaquin groundwater basin, of which we share about 5 to 10% of that area.
Well, I'll look forward to that seminar, but I do have one more question that I would like for today. In a perfect world, you know, we leave here and this is all a go, and you cash this $920,000 check that's being offered. What's the timeline to get surface water to that part of the county?
That's part of why I'm here. The important topic that I really want to underline is that this is a very collaborative approach toward managing a groundwater management area. The reality is it's part of the eastern San Joaquin groundwater basin that is in a state of overdraft. It's identified in the DWR reports. And the only way we can mitigate this overdraft is to begin operating it in a mode called conjunctive use, which means you manage it in a way that you put surface water to beneficial use when it's available, and when there's a long-term drought and surface water may not be available, you have groundwater to fall back on. But what that means is that we need to be able to bring surface water in so that we can manage the groundwater basin sustainably. Whether or not this particular project gets permitted, the reality is the groundwater basin still, groundwater levels are still falling. We still need to find some type of sustainable management strategy to mitigate this falling groundwater table. And in my mind, we have surface water rights available that are not being put to full beneficial use. It's time that we need to work together as a community, as a region, as a county, as a water district to elevate the importance of this effort and look for economic ways to put it into practice. The reality is this: we may be staring at a third-year drought right now. In fact, snowpacks are about 65% of the average for today. That's 65%. The reservoirs currently are at 1992 water levels. That was at the end of a 6-year drought. And my concern is if next winter, if we get a 76 or a 77 type water year, you're going to see reservoirs empty statewide. And you're going to see a groundwater basin that's going to be pumped even more because people are going to be needing it for their crops. They're going to have longer growing season. It's going to continue to drop. And if we don't begin doing something to put that surface water to beneficial use, we may lose it to other parts of the state. And then when we lose that water, we'll never have a way to be able to come back and mitigate our portion of this eastern San Joaquin groundwater basin. So I think it's a very important topic, and I think it needs to be elevated in terms of what we're talking about as a community to help ensure a reliable and sustainable water supply for the entire region.
So, Mr. Patterson, in a one-word answer, how long would it take if, to get surface water to the area?
You're trying to take a complicated topic and
I
get
know
a
it's
soundbite.
I know it's very complicated. If the residents were in favor of assessing themselves and you know, everything was
Well, I hesitate to put a number on it because I think you're
Well,
looking for a number.
I'm looking for a simple, or a answer of what is a realistic timeline, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years.
I'll give
I
you the
was
most
involved with the sewer with Arnold. I know what, you know, what is involved to some extent, so
I'll
just
give you the most optimistic, and then what would be
In
maybe
one word.
considered average. 5 to 10 years.
thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Who's next?
Good morning, my name is Brenda Whited. I'm staff biologist with CSER. My points there in response to the rebuttal comments made by Ms. Kinderman at the last Planning Commission meeting and are also covered in the staff report regarding greenhouse gas emissions and adequacy of the final EIR regarding biological resource mitigation. To begin with greenhouse gases, Ms. Kinderman stated that a qualitative analysis for greenhouse gas emissions, that is a description of the contributions to greenhouse gases, is sufficient, and that a quantitative analysis is not necessary. And the staff asserted that this is true for small residential projects. However, this is not a small project by any means. It's affecting hundreds of acres. There's huge traffic impacts with these multiple events happening so many times a year with hundreds of people. We dispute that this is a small project. Also, I reviewed the entire air quality section again of the final EIR, and I found no description, that is no qualitative analysis of the greenhouse gases emitted. That is, there's no attempt to describe the emissions that are produced by the energy needed to pump the 100 million gallons of water for landscaping, the energy needed to build, heat, cool, and power the new development, the energy needed, the vehicle miles associated with the project, and the oak trees that were destroyed, which act as carbon sinks. So with no analysis, and especially with no measurements, there's no information for the public to make these decisions or to get that information, and there's no idea for decision makers of how to adequately mitigate for these impacts. Hence, there's no compliance with CEQA. Ms. Kinderman also stated that there are no quantifiable thresholds for greenhouse gases, and the final EIR concludes that it is difficult to determine whether an individual project would actually have an impact on global climate change. However, California courts have rejected this argument that a project contribution to an impact is too small to matter when there are no thresholds. Courts have determined that in order to comply with CEQA's cumulative impact requirements, every project that contributes to greenhouse gas emissions, no matter how small, must account for its greenhouse gas contribution and must adequately mitigate. And when you've got a problem as big as global climate change, it does not satisfy CEQA to say that a project addition to the problem is too small to be mitigated. It doesn't need to be mitigated. Regarding biological resources, the applicant and Ms. Kinderman have stated several times that the resource agencies, namely State Fish and Game and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, found no past or present violations. However, there's no evidence of this in the project documents. On the contrary, we have clear evidence in the final EIR and in the drafts that Fish and Game Program Manager Kent Smith wrote in his comment letter, requiring the applicant to consult with resource agencies does not constitute mitigation. We do have the evidence from Fish and Wildlife Deputy Assistant Supervisor Peter Cross, who recommended that the EIR contain a proposal to conserve land for wildlife, and that also the rock cobble and dams in the altered streams be removed to restore the streams to their natural state. Neither of these fish and wildlife recommendations were followed in the final EIR. So contrary to the claims of the applicant's counsel, the evidence that we do have points to the fact that the applicant has not properly consulted with or done the mitigations recommended by the resource agencies. So once again, the final EIR fails to acknowledge these problems, which creates another failure to comply with CEQA. And to conclude, despite making broad claims in response to major problems with the EIR, Ms. Kinderman did not provide any actual evidence that shows that the final EIR complies with CEQA. And so we stand by our recommendation that this final EIR should not be certified as either being complete or legally adequate. Thank you for your time. And I have a handout.
Any questions?
morning. My name is Tom Infacino, and I'm here on behalf of the Calaveras Planning Coalition. In rebuttal to the staff report, yesterday I sent you emails containing draft findings of fact that support denial of the project in its entirety. I hope you had a chance to look at those, but I will summarize right now. As noted in the staff report, draft findings, for a land use project to get approval, the county must find it consistent with the general plan, and that finding must be based on facts in the record. Last month, I provided you with a detailed analysis demonstrating that this project is not consistent with many provisions of the general plan designed to protect people's property rights. In addition, for a land use project to get approval, it also must not have a nexus to legal inadequacies in the general plan. Last month, I provided you with a detailed analysis demonstrating that this project has more than one strong nexus to legal flaws in the general plan. These flaws were previously brought to the county's attention in Mintier & Associates' general plan evaluation, a report that the county paid $30,000 to have done. Following that study, the county offered and later contracted to have the general plan fixed for about $800,000. We are now 3 years into that general plan update process. The staff report says that the Mintier report's only an opinion and that the county stands by the validity of its general plan. Do you commissioners really believe that the county is paying $800,000 to fix a general plan that ain't broke? Do you expect us to believe that? In this regard, the staff report's conclusion is not a finding of fact. It's merely a finding of fiction. As a staff and as a planning commission, you owe it to the Board of Supervisors to give them accurate and truthful guidance on planning issues. They depend on you to look at the details and to give them straight answers. There's no shame to you if later the board decides to make a different decision than you recommend. They have political considerations that give them a broader perspective than yours. Your job is to look at the project to see if it conforms to the rules and to make your findings based on facts. If the board then ignores your good counsel and makes a mistake, well, that is their mistake, not your mistake. I believe that when you look at this project and compare it to the rules, the facts compel you to recommend denial to protect the people's right to the quiet enjoyment of their property. In closing, I want to share with you that a couple of weeks ago, 140 lawyers and law students gathered in Sacramento at an all-day conference on government ethics. Government ethics. We reviewed the ethical lapses that were involved. In concluding,
please conclude. Yes.
We reviewed the ethical lapses that were involved in the recent investment scandals. And we also looked at the effectiveness of laws and regulations designed to compel public officials to act ethically. In the end, many of us concluded that the best way to improve ethics in government is to establish a culture of ethics right in government agencies. That culture of ethics starts with leaders, with decision makers, with planning commissioners like you. You build on that by supporting ethical behavior on the part of staff, especially when that behavior is not easy.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman, members of the Commission. My name is Lou Mayhew. I wanted to comment on Mr. Abbott's, in essence, finding of water, and his, I think it's a mischaracterization of what GeoCon concluded. GeoCon concluded, based on reviewing Mr. Nelson's report, which summarized well sampling, well depth sampling, based on some sketchy CCWD well depth sampling, reports of well difficulties in the area. GeoCon concluded that they think there's adequate water to serve existing needs, but not beyond that. That's what they based that statement on, data looking at the entire picture. They did not base
that on their theoretical estimate of 310,000 gallons of water being used. So that was an estimate based on apparently averages and who knows what. But that was not based or not tied to the bedrock reality of their assessment that, you know, maybe current water use is okay, we really need to study it. So finding that whatever the current water use is, based on Rainbird data, is less than the theoretical estimate, that's not a real difference. So anyway, I hope that's clear, but anyway, so that is not a savings of water. Their Geocon's conclusion was simply based on all of the data, well sampling data, and their best guess. Thank you.
I'd like the planning commission thought that I think I cheated Mr. Infusino a couple minutes because I looked at the hourglass and I was doing a manual time because the hourglass hadn't finished. So I'd like to offer him another 2 minutes if he wants that now. I'm sorry, sir, but when the hourglass isn't empty, then I have to go to a different method. So I do apologize, Mr. Infusino.
I'm glad because I was going to compliment staff and you cut me off. Today we note that staff, in their staff report, took a step of ethical behavior by recommending denial of parts of the project. And I thank them for the courage involved in taking that step. Today we look to you, the commissioners, and ask you to take the next step. Thank you. God help you, and God help the good people of Calaveras County.
Thank you.
More comment on behalf of KIRC. I just have one handout I provided to staff. Let me hand it. Let me address, first of all, respond to general issues. First of all, the project is claimed benefits for water, fire, schools, and traffic. But I want to point out that in Mr. Abbott's comments to you, I'm not going to get to that handout yet, but in Mr. Abbott's comments to you, he made it very clear that this project is not providing any benefit to Calaveras County other than mitigating the impacts caused by the project. He directly used the term nexus in talking about traffic, water, all the impacts. They're not paying a dime more than is necessary to mitigate for the impacts caused by this project. If a roadway isn't supported in the EIR as being directly affected by the project, they're not paying any more than their fair share of the cost of bringing that road up. So the idea that somehow roads in Calaveras County are going to be improved free, that there's a benefit, is an illusion. And that flows back to the issue, for example, of schools. You heard from your school person saying, we get $3 a square foot. That's limited by state law under legislation that was by builder-enacted legislation supported by them that doesn't adequately mitigate for the impacts of schools. Currently, our schools are in a Ponzi scheme. Every time we build a house and put a student in schools, we don't get enough money from the developer fees to house that student. And so you don't solve any problems by allowing 14 houses and putting students in the schools that provide a temporary influx of cash, but by the very statutory nature of our school financing don't fund the schools. Water is the same issue. Your benefits on water are use it or lose it. Well, don't use it for a bad project. Don't use water for the sake of using it for a golf course in the wrong place that takes water from other uses. You're better off to use the water for an appropriate use. In terms of the benefits, the handout that I just gave you, the only benefit that this project can argue boils down to tax revenue to Calaveras County. And as our expert pointed out to you, and there's been no evidence over here to support these figures of green fees and no evidence to support these figures, ridiculous figures of $500 per day per round of golf. Those figures, as supported by the local market, are actually in the area of $35 to $50 per round of golf, which is supported by the area, and somewhere between $7 and $10 for expenditures for every round of golf. What does that mean in terms of revenue? It isn't in the hundreds of millions of dollars, because unless I'm wrong, and I haven't heard any support so far, you don't get sales tax revenue on green fees. So the only revenue that's going to be generated for the county on this project, and I'm talking about the golf course, is from the sales from the store at about $7 to $10 per round of golf, based on every other golf course in the area, from Auburn to La Contenta to any other golf course. I provided you a handout that broke down the total revenue for the project, which is the top. That doesn't help Calaveras County. The issue is how much comes in terms of tax revenue. The projections provided by Mr. Nemi indicate that he believes 60 to 80% of that revenue is new income to the county. The opposite is true. It's 10 to 40% are new revenue coming into the county, new players, not cannibalizing off of other golf courses. If you follow that through and say, okay, therefore, 10 to 40% of the new revenue at $7 to $10 per round of golf that's coming into the golf course is going to be taxed at the county tax rate, that generates somewhere between less than $1,000 to somewhere a little under $4,000 of additional tax revenue to Calaveras County. So the entire financial benefit that you've been provided is an illusion. And that illusion is based on impact fees, where he now argues he doesn't have to pay any more than the impacts he's causing, to grossly inflated green fees, grossly inflated sales revenues, to argue to you that there's going to be some tax benefit that just doesn't exist. And in this table, I make references to tables when I say Table 7, Table 9, and Table 10. That is my cannibalization or use of the tables that were provided by their expert, merely providing the revenue figures that are realistic based on the only testimony you've heard. So in conclusion, you are being offered an illusion. And that illusion was made clear by Mr. Abbott getting up here telling you that he needs to eliminate some of these things like the 230-acre conservation easement. It's ridiculous to argue that approval that can be bought for $100 over the internet from an agency that's called Audubon International somehow overrides the significant adverse impacts of the loss of agricultural land that have been identified in the EIR. Thank you.
I have a question for you, lead. Don't you consider property taxes in this at all? Is this part of your table?
In his analysis, he puts in property taxes only based on the housing as part of the analysis. And he puts that housing at $2 million per house. Now, I just dealt with the golf course. But again, there is no, we'll need expert testimony on that. But again, that is a figure that is pulled out of the air. We all know that nobody is going to build a $2 million house on this golf course anytime within 5 to 10 years. And although we haven't presented any experts on that, I just took apart the golf course, because the current recommendation before you right now is, from staff, is to approve this golf course based on financial benefits. But if you look at those figures for $2 million, $1.5 million to $2 million per house, it's an illusion as well.
Sales tax is going up April 1st too, by the way.
Right, but as far as I know, there's still no sales tax on the green fees. So we're still talking about the sales tax only in the store, and we provided you figures to show, which are based on what actual surrounding golf courses are generating in terms of revenue, which is the percentage of the green fees. He's got it so that the store sales are greater revenue than the green fees. The reality is the green fees are the primary source of revenue for the golf course, with a small percentage of that reflected in other sales, restaurant, store.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Next.
Good morning, Colleen Platt, Valley Springs. I will try to be brief on my comments. I was able to talk to Public Works and get some answers, and also planning. And some of the previous speakers addressed some of the points I've raised in my letter, which is submitted to the department, so hopefully I can condense this. Weimer Road was one of my concerns, and the gentleman from San Joaquin County pointed out, as I pointed out in my letter, that the level of service was level of service C, and that the change in the staff report was not correct. And I spent a long time going through all the tables and the maps and the pages, and he's already done that, so I won't repeat that. But basically, the northern section of Weimar Road is a collector with level of service C. The nexus to Trinitas, that was questioned by the applicant's attorney at the last meeting. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the nexus. This project will add significant traffic to northern Weimar and Hospital Road, and the road will be impacted. In fact, it undoubtedly has already been impacted, as the construction of the entire golf course has already occurred, generating many truckloads of material hauled to the site through Hospital, which is the only access road, which is also Weimar when it hits 26. So the impacts have already occurred. There's also an arguable nexus to requiring road mitigations and improvements. As, again, the gentleman from San Joaquin County looked at, he quoted many of the tables that I quote in my letters, and he actually quotes the same figures from the same table that talks about special event weekday trip counts, 1,807 daily trips identified during a tournament with 1,000 attendees. That number that he mentioned, 195 of those trips happening during morning peak hours. And this could mean, 100 or so vehicles traveling that road during that peak hour, in addition to existing commuter traffic and school traffic on that road. Now, would this decrease the level of service from level of service C? That's kind of the catch there. And then according to that table 29 that he referred to, we're only 7 trips short. There's 188 trips listed, and 195 is the cutting off point from level of service C to D. The argument here is that that is a very small number, and if the EIR had considered other factors and impacts that have been suggested in project comments, the drop to level of service D could reasonably have been projected, and mitigations could have been required as part of this condition of the project, and you can still do this. Impacts not analyzed in the EIR include the conditions of the road, the substandard narrow conditions mentioned, the dangerous conditions, the vertical and horizontal alignment not analyzed in the methodology, the greater potential for traffic on roads that has not been included in analysis, such as the recreation zoning, allowing unlimited use of golf course rounds. So those haven't been studied, the 40 to 60,000 rounds. The allowance of events with more than 1,000 people with a conditional use permit under recreational zoning. The difficulty in turning away traffic in special events, what to do with that overflow. I support the condition 5 that has been added, improving Weimar Road, and I also ask that the county consider adding improvements or mitigation measures to both Weimar and that section of Hospital Road south of the project. The second thing I wanted to mention was the special event parking and paving. The draft conditions of approval now include improved requirements for parking and attendance at special events. I just had a couple comments on some of those new requirements. Condition 2-3C now requires all permanent parking and pedestrian areas to be 6 inches of asphalt or concrete. This actually conflicts with the project description, which states that both the 2 and 3 acre parking lots will use permeable pavement. Residents, planning commissioners, and supervisors have expressed support in the past for permeable pavement to reduce stormwater runoff and other impacts to the environment. Permeable paving can be more expensive, but has both practical environmental aesthetic benefits. Why is asphalt or concrete being required when the applicant is willing to install the permeable pavers? The other issue is the temporary parking area for special events has now been described and called out as how many spaces it needs. They have called out 300 spaces for the events up to 999 people. This works out to approximately 5 acres of land and this has not been studied in the EIR as far as where this will occur, how will it impact the site. This has not been included in analysis of the EIR.
Thank you, Colleen.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Dan Hendricks. I'm a former employee at Calaveras County Planning Department. I'm also here to kind of inform you of some just general comments in rebut to Mr. Abbott's presentation about a wonderful thing called outdoor festivals. 9 years ago, I was the planner in charge of the Tamarack Music Festival. We had a conditional use permit for large gatherings up in Tamarack. This commission put together 72 conditions of approval on the operation of the Tamarack Music Festival. It's a very difficult project. We had name tags, wristbands required as part of the security measures of the operations of the festival. This is a 2-day festival. We had up to 999 individuals during 2 years of the event. This activity impacted the community of cabin owners up there in Tamarack that created learning lessons for both this commission and staff at that time. If the staff hasn't yet discovered the Tamarack Music Festival special event file, I recommend you look at it. There may be some even ideas for what may be occurring at this large venue setting. The other item I'd like to bring up is that the Williamson Act contract is something that is not on this agenda at this point. That should have been discussed in the February meeting. But I do feel that this one of the main purposes of the commission is to enforce and respect the purpose and intent of the Williamson Act. And I hope you continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you hear all right? Is the mic okay? Is it okay?
Pull it up just a little bit. Let's see if that...
Better?
You have a deep voice.
Madam Chair, members of the commission. My name is Darrell Rusk. I live at 101 Melcher Road in Burson. And one of the primary issues on the agenda today is the staff report items, and one of the items involved water. I disagree with the staff report in one respect, and I thought that it was a very good report overall. But in one respect, the long-term environmental impact is also on the table here. And long-term water is not going to come magically out of thin air. I wish it would. We could use the rain. But Ed Patterson, who is an extraordinarily bright guy, but he is a professional in his field, and sometimes he uses terminology that doesn't actually get down to the street for me to understand. So I've spent time trying to understand what they're talking about. A long-term impact, because of Trinitas, is a partnership that will bring a pipeline of raw water to the western end of the county. Now, what that means is it's not potable water, it's raw water, which is used for agriculture and it's used for recharge purposes, underground rock for recharge purposes. We desperately need that because for almost 4 decades, the groundwater table has dropped 1 foot a year, roughly. Some years 10 inches, some years 14. So for 40 years, we've lost 1 foot a year at groundwater water table level. The only way to stop that, or at least stop the bleeding, is to recharge our water. Right now, the only thing on the table that is, even in the long term, available to us is that pipeline. That pipeline is a proposal between Trinitas and CCWD. That will bring water for recharge
water for agriculture. We need it. Trinitas has been willing to put up a tremendous amount as a partner. That's not just a partnership with CCWD. That's a partnership to me, one of the neighbors. I live about maybe a mile away. It's a partnership with Calaveras County. It's a partnership with each of you because it is our water. And as Ed did say, if we don't find a use for it, we will lose our rights. I was in a meeting Monday night with East Bay Mud in Sutter Creek. They were presenting their expansion of Part E proposal. There were roughly 145 people there who opposed the expansion to the degree that they were talking about. However, nowhere in their proposal, nowhere in their presentation did they ever mention Calaveras County's water rights. I found that to be very interesting. So, water's important. There's an avenue to get that water. Trinitas is a part of that avenue, and I don't think we should ignore it. So on that point, thank you very much. One side point is, with regard to the economy or the economic benefits, there's already one house that's being proposed by the buyer, and the house would be a $5 million home. There's money out there, and there are buyers and there are builders, and our builders in this county need the work. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We can take one more speaker before we take a 5-minute break.
Good morning. My name is Al Liberato, and I'm from Valley Springs. And once again, as everybody spoke, your effort to determine fact and, the differences of opinions, it's mind-boggling to figure out what's fact and what's fiction. So I appreciate what you're trying to do, and further, I appreciate the efforts of the staff and community county experts that are and continue to provide you with information. I'm struck by the amount of information that's presented, and for me to try to ferret out what's truth and what's fiction. I played golf for many years, and I appreciate your questions that you specifically asked. A comparison of golf courses throughout Sacramento County and estimating the numbers that they're coming up with, $7 to $10 is what an average golfer pays when they play golf. I don't know if they've been to La Quintana, but to buy a Coke and some peanuts and maybe a hot dog is going to put you out at about 11 bucks. That's just on a daily rate. If you come up and you want to buy a golf ball or maybe some tees, I'm just talking in generalities, you're going to be well beyond $7 to $10. To compare Trinitas to Manteca Golf Course, to Swenson, is a disservice to the project in its entirety, and I think you know that. The model is not set up to bring in daily play. That's not the model. The model is just as you asked, of courses. Sorrento up in Sacramento, Del Rio in Modesto. I mean, look at the model that is being presented and what it's attempting to do for our county. It's not a daily play. It's not meant to be a daily play. It's meant to be a course that offers an opportunity to spend a night, to engage in a family activity if you choose, and to further go out into the community and visit the wineries, to visit the other golf courses, to do the skiing, everything that goes with it. That's the model that's being presented, yet it's being discounted by people who are talking in terms of $7 to $10 a day. I disagree, and I don't think, they play golf. I would question them. The other thing, our superintendent came and spoke before you about the cost. Yet everybody has opinions. It must be difficult to ferret out what is an opinion that represents our interests versus what's an opinion that represents somebody else's outside interest. You have numerous opportunities within our community from people who do provide us services, the sheriffs, the fire department, the water board. Yet the water board, our water board, wasn't even included in the process. They had to come as an outside agency now and begin talking. They've done ample work to provide water for us. They have the network, they have the proposals, they have the future, they have the vision to bring surface water to an area that definitely needs it. I mean, the last 2 weeks, if anything, Stockton is trying to get more water out of Hogan. They're claiming the Pardee and the Comanche water is theirs. They want to bring Pardee Dam. So I have enough to say to you, but I thank you for what you're trying to do and trying to figure out. I hope that you take the concerns of the people that are giving you the opinion, that are in favor, and you can look in terms of what is fact and fiction. That's all I'm saying. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we will now take a 5-minute break. We're in recess.
Hello there.